Good morning, everyone. So, in this is the second lecture on the topic sources of Muslim law. In the first lecture, we have done with the primary sources, and this one will be doing about secondary. So, first, a quick recap onto what all we did in the primary sources. There were four primary sources: the Quran, then Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. Right now, in this lecture, we will be dealing with four kinds of secondary sources. In primary also we had four, in secondary also we have four secondary sources. The first one, starting with the first one, which is custom. Then second, judicial precedent. Then third, legislation. The fourth is good conscience and equity. So we'll understand what does each of these sources means. Starting from the first source, custom. Now, what is custom? What, according to you, is custom? The customs, it is what comes to our mind, what strikes on seeing the word custom is some old practices, some practices which people have continuously followed for decades or for a very long period of time. That is custom, which is nowhere written, nowhere said anything, but it's just a practice which people have followed for a very long period, and they follow them for so long that they obtain the status of law in some cases. So Muslim law contains various customs which regulate practices of people. So understanding a custom is a tradition. What is a custom? It is a tradition passing on from one generation to another. We can say that custom is a tradition passing on from one generation to another that originally governed human conduct and has obtained the force of law in a particular locality. Having said that, in a particular locality and all, there are these preconditions of a valid custom. There has to be a valid custom, like custom must be territorial. It must be existing from memorable time, ancient, for a long period of time. It must be continuous. Custom should not oppose the public policies, and custom must not be in contravention of Quran and Ijma. So basically these are the valid custom for in Muslim law. But here we were dealing with first, what does this custom mean? So the very basic meaning of custom is that it is a practice which people follow continuously for a long period of time, and in fact they follow them for so long that they obtain the status of law in some cases. And Muslim law contains various custom regulating practice of people. Now customs, they are not independent source of Muslim law. Now if we go back to the British time, then courts in India, they recognize the legal force of custom. In some occasions, even on knowing the fact that they were opposed to the clear text of primary text of Muslim law, still they recognize the legal force of the customs. Now this caused problem, this caused dissatisfaction among the orthodox Muslims. that how can it these customs can how can they have a legal force in spite of being opposed to the text of the primary source of Muslim law. Now, on being dissatisfied, these Orthodox Muslim, then whole of this movement led to the passage of Sharia Act 1937. Sharia Act 1937. We'll be dealing with it in the later one. So, now, what does this act do? This act abolished most of the customs from the Muslim personal law. So it was brought at that moment. This law deals with marriage, succession, inheritance, charities among Muslims, and so on. Now, gift, waqf, trust, many things. So, according to this act, which abolishes many customs from Muslim personal law, and only Muslim personal law will be applied in some matters like inheritance, special property of female, or marriage, guardianship, gift, waqf. Only in these matters, only in these respect, custom and usages, they do not have any place. But customs are still having said that, customs are still applicable in matters of agricultural lands, charities, and religious and charitable endowments. So, in various matters of Muslim law, custom do play an important role. Though we have other acts governing Muslim personal law, but customs also play a part and is applicable as said on agricultural land, right? See, here it is written, in various matters of Muslim law, custom play a significant role when the matter is relating to agricultural land, testamentary succession among certain communities, right? And a charity other than waqf. Waqf is dealt by Sharia Act, but a charity or a charitable endowment. So this is a importance of custom and Muslim law, and it do have a significance. Now, customs were the basis of entire social life, religion, morality, trade, and commerce. Customs has not been recognized as a source of law in a Muslim law. However, it cannot be denied that custom has always been given a place under Muslim law if it is in conformity with Muslim law. So these are the preconditions of valid custom, and as said, it is applied to these 3-4 things. But because there was a dissatisfaction among the Orthodox Muslim on the point that these customs, the legal force was, the customs were recognized. The courts started recognizing the legal force of customs on some cases, on some occasions, even on knowing on the fact that they were opposed to some primary text of the Muslim law. So that there is no such confusion, there is no such thing, Shariat Act was in 1937. It all of this dissatisfaction led to the passage of the Shariat Act 1937. Now this abolished most of the custom from Muslim personal law. But still, in these 3-4 matters, customs do play a role. So it have a validity. And we call custom urf. We also call custom as urf. If you see, okay, where's this pen? So we call this custom as urf, right? Can be written in bracket. Moving on to the second part, judicial precedent. Now, what does judicial precedent mean? So as written, these includes the decision of a Privy Council, Supreme Court, High Court of India, in which judges explain what law is, and their decisions are regarded as precedent for future cases. So what does this meant? That courts in India, at many places, they have interpreted Muslim law in many cases. Now, all of these interpretation of the Muslim law, they have always generally relied on the primary sources, legislations, and the opinion of jurists. So courts have also settled many important or have, we can say that court have given its judicial decisions, and it sets as a judicial precedent. And so it counts as a source of Muslim law. Now what does this mean? The interpretation of Mohammedan law by the judges of Indian High Court and Supreme Court, they continue even in today's time, modern times, to supplement and to modify the Islamic law. And so they are the continuing sources of Mohammedan law. Now, these decisions include of the Privy Council, Supreme Court, as well as of High Court of India. So these decisions are regarded as precedent for future cases. Suppose if any case is coming in future, they would refer to these previous judicial decisions. Now, here if you are getting confused, what does precedent mean? If you're listening for the first time, this word precedent. So it is a principle. What does judicial precedent mean? It is a principle or a rule which is established in a previous legal case. Or you can say it is an earlier event or action that is regarded as an example or a guide to be considered in subsequent similar case. By looking onto the previous case, it can set as an example, or it can also guide to be considered in the subsequent case, which have similar issues or the facts. We can refer to the previous case decided by the court. This is what precedent meant. And judicial precedent, any decision given by the court. So this also counts under the sources of Muslim law. Moving on to the next, justice, equity, and good conscience. Then we have, one more. So hope it is clear. Now, if I conclude this, there are many cases in which the judicial decisions they have given a new dimension to the Muslim law. Many cases. Moving on to justice, equity, and good conscience. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean by justice, equity, and good conscience? So, if you read first, the doctrine of equity, justice, and good conscience is regarded as one of the source of Muslim law. Abu Hanifa, the founder of Hanafi sect of Sunni, expounded the principle that rule of law based on analogy could be set aside at the option of judge on a liberal construction or juristic preference to meet the requirements of a particular case. So here, this means that sometimes analogical deductions also fail. They fail to satisfy the jurist. In such cases, according to Hanafi, a jurist could use the good conscience. So this the liberal construct, the juristic preference. This principle is also of Muslim law. They are also known as, which is written here, istihasan. Istihasan, which literally means or can be translated as liberal construction or juristic preference. Liberal construction or juristic preference. So it is very simple. There's nothing big to understand in this point. You just have to understand with the words make itself so clear. Right. So the good conscience here would majorly tell about what is right, a sense, internal sense of right and wrong. Through that, seeing all of that, in any cases, jurists could use good conscience. Moving on to the next. This is a simple one. Then, good conscience was the simple one. Then moving on to a legislation. Now, there have been many legislative enactments, alteration, modification of the original Muslim law, but Parliament has made some laws to regulate some Islamic practices. For example, the Shariat Act 1937, as I discussed with you earlier while reading about custom. This act governs of marriage, succession, and inheritance. So this is also a source, secondary source, but these are the secondary sources of, don't forget it. Here we are talking about secondary sources of Muslim law, not the primary one. Alright. Then the Musliman Waqf Validating Act, or the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act. This is another law which regulates certain divorce cases among Muslims. So these acts they have affected, they have supplemented, they have modified the Muslim law. And according to the need of time and circumstances, Indian legislature enacted the law to fulfill the need, and so it should also happen. So this is the simple four. Yes, these four were the only these four secondary sources. The first one, custom, calling it urf. Then second one, judicial precedent, that is any judicial cases or anything, any decisions of judicial decisions which sets as a precedent, as an example for any subsequent case to come of similar facts or issues or anything. So it sets an example or a guide to that case. That is the meaning of judicial precedent. Then legislations, as said, the Shariat Act 19, according to the time and need, the law was made. So it is also counted under secondary sources of Muslim law. According to the circumstances, the need of time, laws are to be made, and so we had many acts, Musliman Waqf Act, Shariat Act, or even for divorce, dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, and so on. So legislation also is a secondary source of Muslim law. And then good conscience and equity. That if analogical deduction fails, or in case of any other hardship, a jurist could use good conscience. That's it. These are the four sources. Quite very easy. In the other lecture, we'll be doing about schools of Muslim law. Thank you.